the Director of the Council of Arab-British Understanding, and he joins us now from London. Good to have you back with us, Chris. Let's start with the return to the north of Gaza. We know that this was a key part of this first phase of the ceasefire deal, but that condition was delayed by the Israelis because they had claimed that one of their commitments regarding an Israeli hostage wasn't met. It really does underscore how shaky this truce is, doesn't it?
There is absolutely no trust between Israel and Hamas. Every single element of this whole deal will be under scrutiny, and if one part of that agreement is not done exactly to the letter and on time, you can expect there to be a repercussion, and that's exactly what happened. But it does, at least, the mediators have worked hard. We've got a deal where there would be a release on Thursday and on Saturday this week to remedy that. So let's be grateful for these very, very small mercies. But, you know, on your screens, and what we are seeing here is really just extraordinary. It's a stunning indictment of all that has happened to see over 650,000 people now moving back up to the north of Gaza. This is not really even a return to their homes, because so much destruction has been visited upon this area, not least in the last 3 months of 2024, that they will be going there and moving from one tent, one shelter, to possibly a tent that doesn't even exist. But they're doing it because they want to demonstrate that they will not be forced off their land, they will not be ethnically cleansed. And they're doing it also at a time when the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has suggested exactly that should happen, that they should actually leave to Egypt, to Jordan, to cleanse, to clean up Gaza. So this is really, yes, it's an incredible moment. There's a lot of joy, but it's also very bittersweet. These people have been displaced so many times, sometimes up to 10 times, and they're treated like cattle, herded around from one area of the Gaza Strip to another. It's just really a savage indictment of all that's happened over the last 15, 16 months.
You mentioned Donald Trump there because when the ceasefire deal was agreed, many analysts, including advocates for the Palestinian cause, had said that Donald Trump was a key in reaching this ceasefire deal. And then at the weekend, as you mentioned, we heard the US president suggest that the whole of Gaza should be cleared of its original inhabitants, perhaps evacuated to places like Jordan and Egypt. What do you make of those comments? Do you think that was the plan all along, that not only should this ceasefire be agreed, but at some point that would be conditional on the Palestinians eventually being forced out of the territory altogether?
I think that President Trump certainly wanted to get a deal, and he pushed for that very hard. He put his foot down, he put pressure on the Israelis in a way that President Biden simply refused to do. And in that, he got to this deal between Israel and Hamas. But beyond that, I think it was always unclear what Donald Trump had in mind. I'm still not sure that he knows either, except, unlike Biden, if the mood suits him, if his interests are aligned, he is prepared to do things very differently, to say things that are going to upset both Israelis and Palestinians and the wider region. Now, in my view, it is unworkable that you can demand of Egypt and Jordan to take in so many hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. They don't want to go. It is a moot point as to whether Donald Trump really is going to stick with this idea, if he's going to push it back. He's in conversations. He's spoken to King Abdullah of Jordan. He's speaking to President Sisi of Egypt. I think they're going to be very robust in saying, we cannot do this. So is this just going to be a one-off from Donald Trump that he mentions this, or is it something he's going to push? But underlying it, there is a point. Yes, they should not be forced out of Gaza. That is true. But given the levels of destruction, there is a huge question as to how you bring about the rebuilding of the Gaza Strip when nearly everything is destroyed. The health system just simply doesn't exist anymore. Schools, universities. So somehow, if we ever get to phase 3 of this deal, where that reconstruction program begins, I think there is a question as to how do you actually physically manage to do it? Now, that's got to be divorced from the political ambitions of those who wish to empty Gaza of its population. And that's going to be a very tricky one. It's difficult politically because Palestinians, in all of their history, remember that 70% of the population of Gaza are already refugees from 1947-49. So they know that if they leave, they may well not be allowed back. So it's very delicate. And, Trump is a bull in a china shop in dealing with all of this. He doesn't understand the dynamics, but he is prepared to knock heads together. And occasionally that can produce some results.
We are only a week into the 6-week part of the first phase of this 3-phase ceasefire deal, as you pointed out. But as we've seen in recent days, it does seem like Israel reserves the right to shift the goalposts in terms of the terms of the first phase of this agreement. How hopeful are you that we'll even see the second phase of this deal emerge? We understand mediators from Egypt, Qatar and the United States are preparing to engage in the talks for the next stage of this agreement. But given the fact that the Israelis seem to be changing the terms of this deal on a whim, are you hopeful we'll even get to that stage?
It's going to be very tricky to get the full implementation of phase 2. I think there's no doubt about that. We've seen Prime Minister Netanyahu say that he wants to resume military operations. They don't consider this their mission is completed. They still see Hamas as a powerful force within Gaza, albeit significantly degraded. So yes, I think we're going to struggle to get phase 2. This is where the mediators have to come in, and particularly the United States, to say it has to go ahead. So their role will be crucial. I think another factor will be Israeli public opinion, that the pressure will build up. There's going to be the release of 33 hostages on the Israeli side in this first phase, in that first 6 weeks. Now, we know that there's around about 98 alive or dead within the Gaza Strip. So there will be some domestic pressure on the Netanyahu coalition to allow phase 2 to go ahead to get the rest out. And the more you see these releases and the joy that unfolds, that might grow. So if you wanted to look for a bright spot, you can look there. But certainly the politics is deeply problematic here. And I think it would be a tragedy if all the major international actors do not do their utmost to make sure that we get not just to phase 2, but to phase 3 of this deal, because there is no future in going back to and restoring Israeli military operations. It's not going to bring them peace and security. It's just going to provide for more suffering and for even more generations who will not see peace and will be prepared to take up, to fight the occupation. There is no end in sight if the Israelis continue to go down that path.
Okay, Chris Doyle, we'll have to leave it there, but it's always really good to get your analysis. Thanks again for joining us.